Ladies and gentlemen and knife enthusiasts the internet over, I finally did it. I joined the BudK Knife of the Month Club, where every single month I'll get a knife at $10 a piece. I have no idea what it's gonna be. It could be crap, or maybe it'll be a diamond in the rough. Let's find out together.
Join me in this review series. This is JJ Cheeks Truck Stop Knives!
Episode 2, the Bugout Tactical Skinner. Retail value $17.99.
It's time! Another month, and I carried another knife, courtesy of the BudK Knife of the Month Club. This one comes to us from Bugout, a tactical Skinner knife with fire starter. Now, when I first opened this thing, which is a 9-inch overall knife with plastic scales and a lanyard hole, and we'll talk more about the details, but I was immediately concerned because I'm not a fixed blade guy. Fixed blade knives are just, they have their utility, they have their place. But with what I use knives for casually, a folding knife really is my preference. These things are just big, bulky, and there's really not an easy way to carry them in a casual workplace setting. So what I had to do, first thing I did was I took this thing off, which I'm not so sure what it is. I mean, it's got these slots so you can wear it on your belt. And I guess it stands off your body, sort of. There's a clip here. I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing, but it's held on by screws, which I lost one of them already. Great. So I just took this thing off and was left with this, which now has these odd square things on the sheath, but I didn't mind too much. And I basically just put it into the front pocket of my lab coat and carried it like that, which was kind of good in the sense that there wasn't a single day that I forgot this because it was always at work. I just left it in there. You might notice that there's this little side pocket which has one of those ferro rod fire starters. I never used it. I probably shouldn't have even brought it to work because, like, I work with a lot of flammable and explosive things. But, I mean, there's no chance that anything would really happen because the detent is actually pretty good on this thing. It snaps in and it freely rotates, but it's not going anywhere. It did have a shoestring on it, which I promptly cut off. And I was actually kind of tempted to remove this thing altogether because it was just kind of there and in the way. But I figured, you know what, I've already taken off this thing, but it's kind of meant to be taken off. So I'm just going to grin and bear it and stick to my craft, hold myself to my self-imposed obligation of carrying the knife as is as much as possible. Anyway, I do kind of like the inclusion of it if I were camping and needed one. It's right there. So that's nice. Let's talk about the sheath itself. It's kind of a Kydex style thing. It's hard molded plastic. And there's a very satisfying snap when you insert the knife into it. Yes. To get the knife out, I've found that you got to take your thumb and kind of push up against this part, or you can even push up against the ferro rod, and that just kind of pops it off just enough so that you can then remove the sheath entirely. Only thing I got to say about the sheath is it leaves marks on the blade of the knife. You can see there on the belly of the knife, there's some strange marks from, it's rubbing up against something in there. There's little bits of plastic. It was a lot worse earlier in the month when I first started sort of breaking it in. There would be little plastic remnants all over this thing. And what really drove me crazy is it's actually scratching it on this part right here. So I wasn't very happy about that. If I ever wanted a knife like this to use in long term or whatever, I would really have to investigate how the sheath is, because this just marks it up. Enough about the sheath. Let's talk about the knife itself. One of the things that I noticed when I first started handling this knife is that when I pick it up, there's nothing above my index finger until you get up here, but just kind of holding it naturally, I don't feel anything there. And I didn't really realize that that was important to me. For example, just pull out a knife I have laying around, the Kershaw Cryo 2. The flipper tab, when it circles around, it stops up here, and when you hold the knife, you can kind of feel it on your finger. And that reassures you that you're holding it correctly. It's sort of like a little bit of feedback that, yep, I grabbed it correctly because I could feel that there. That's a preference that I did not know that I had, which is great because this whole exercise is about, well, besides doing a fun thing with new knives a lot, learning about my preferences. So the absence of something made me realize that's what I like about a knife. So I did get used to it over the first couple of weeks. It essentially wasn't really a problem. I'm always kind of afraid, like, you'll be using the knife and then your hand will slip forward and then you slice your fingers up. It's kind of an irrational fear, but having something blocking your finger is a reassurance that that's not going to happen. But it was okay because the knurling on the handle is actually pretty good. It's cheap plastic, but the knurling keeps it grippy, and that's a good thing. There's a little bit of an ergonomic feature to it with these kind of grooves for your fingers, and that fit me pretty well. I was pretty much satisfied with the hand feel of this thing. There's no jimping whatsoever. It is full tang, and you got a little lanyard triangle on the bottom if you're a lanyard guy. A couple of interesting historical facts. The blade shape is a little peculiar. It's actually called a sharp finger. It was first introduced in 1974 by the Schrade Cutlery Company, and it's basically made for skinning animals. Another fun fact about that Schrade knife from 1974, it was a favorite carry for a guy named Sonny Barger, who was one of the founders of Hell's Angels. Now, he didn't use it to get into knife fights or anything romantic like that. He used it as a tool. He talks about in his book, he used it to pry things. He liked the pointy tip, which you really shouldn't pry things with a knife. But I guess the Schrade old-timer sharp finger pulled it off. So those are all the things I like about this knife. I wasn't a fixed blade carrier going into this, and I remain not a fixed blade kind of guy. So, not something new that I learned about myself, but more of a reaffirmation of something that I already knew, which is still a positive thing, I think. This is, of course, from the Bugout line, which is made in China. And it's got a BudK number on it right there, so this is probably a BudK exclusive kind of thing. I didn't really like it. As a fixed blade knife, I do actually like the sharp finger style. If I do ever end up carrying a fixed blade casually, I think I would like this blade shape. Maybe a little bit smaller. But yeah, it was pretty cool. It did not come sharp. I had to sharpen it myself a couple of times through the month. I used one of these diamond coated ceramic deals. And if you would like to have one of these, BudK sells them for $18. And that snap when you put it in the sheath makes it worth it. And now the traditional open the next knife with the old knife. The package arrived a day early, which I was happy about. I wasn't even planning on making this video, but when I saw that the package had arrived, I jumped on it because I want a folding knife again, please, BudK. Thank you. I can feel the box is small, so it's got to be a folding knife. And I don't care if it is literally a piece of shit. I'm done with fixed blades. And there it is. The Black Tekegara by Chinois. This is what I'll be carrying for the next month.